Hey folks, today we'll be going through my Runecraft Gloryfinder deck. Now one thing to note though, same as all my other decks, is that we're only using cards from Runecraft and neutrals, and there is a ban list effect for 3 neutral cards. Other than that, everything's fair game. One other note though is that just like all my other decks at this time, I'm only using cards up to the Omen of the 10 booster pack. Now I'm getting the latest 3 very soon, but until then, we'll just have to make do. So, let's start off by talking about our glory cards. Now there's a lot of good options for what cards to use as your glory card, and it depends a lot on what classes you're playing or what you know you're going to be playing against. Let's start with the first option, is the Face of Runecraft Dimension Shift. Of course, we are going to be loading our deck with spells, so Dimension Shift is an obvious choice. Dimension Shift reads, when this card is played, banish 10 spells in your cemetery, and it costs 7 less, right? So it's a 5 play point, gain an extra turn. Now, when you banish 10 spells from your cemetery, you make spell chains a lot harder to trigger. That's the only downside. So this definitely is a late game card. However, putting it in your glory zone always has that threat, and just in case you need it the most, as let's say an emergency button, you can always just play it from there. It also protects it from discard effects and so on and so forth, so it is a candidate. I find though that if you put Dimension Shift in your glory card zone, you sometimes never even get to use it. You either lose or win without it even coming into play. So that's something to consider. Let's put it off to the side here though, as we're going to be talking about it more as we showcase the rest of the cards. The next card you can consider as your glory card is Grand Summoning, a Gloryfinder exclusive card. Grand Summoning is perhaps the most powerful card in the deck. Grand Summoning reads, you can summon a 3, 5, and 7 cost follower from your deck. Also regain 2 play points. So 6 cost, summon 15 play points of cards. That is pretty broken. And what's more, if you summon cards with fanfare and the like, all of them trigger, you can pull off some massive combos with this. In fact, in non-class locked Gloryfinder, this is pretty much a staple, right? Even though you can't get the 7 if you're not Rune, still just getting a 3 and 5 of any 3 and 5 follower is just massive. This card alone is why we run a good portion of the deck as followers. We don't hard commit into having 30 or 40 spells. We do run about half of the deck as followers, because there's a lot of 3, 5, and 7 cost followers that are really nice. So we'll also put that up there just in case we need to refer to it again. Next card, Giant Chimera. This is your big spell boost payoff. So, Fanfare, Spell Chain 10, deal 5 damage to everything. Spell Chain 20, deal 10 damage. Spell chain 30, deal 30 damage. So if you do get spell chain 30, you basically win the game on the spot. That is very hard though. In the deck, I think we run 20, 25-ish spells. So we're not actually interested in going for the full 30. That's because, one, there aren't 30 excellent Runecraft spells printed yet. So if we were to push up to that number, we'd have to start putting in really kind of bad spells to reach it. Two, if you fill your deck full of spells, you're never going to reach the turn where you're able to play this for 30 spell chain, and it's just too weak of a deck. So you need followers to back this up. That's why we only run about 25. And running about 25 is important because even though this deck does draw through the deck very quickly, you do filter it out very quickly. You often end up with maybe 2 or 3 spells left. And in that case, you don't want to run exactly 20 or else you won't even get the second effect. This card, I feel, is a good go-to standard glory card. It's a late game threat, so people always know it's there, and you can't stop it. You're just waiting for the inevitable 20 spells in the cemetery when this comes down for 10 damage to everything. So it's a board clear, and you nuke the opponents. On the other hand, Grand Summoning tends to attract a lot of aggro. If people know you're playing Grand Summoning on 8, they'll tend to focus you down a bit more. And that is definitely not what Rune wants. Rune does not have much defense. It uses offense as a form of defense in the form of quick spells to destroy followers. But if everyone sends all their followers at you, you often don't have enough of those offensive spells to defend yourself. So this one doesn't attract that much aggro because it's a very late game effect, and people can always tell how far you are progressed into it. Alright, next card we have Lashena. I don't actually have the full art version, this is a proxy, but I love the art so much that I really wanted to play it. Lashena. What you do for Lashena is you put a what are they called? Amulet, white amulet and black amulet in your EX area. Here they are. So that's a 1 cost and a 2 cost. These amulets, every turn, they heal you for 2, and they deal 2 damage to each opponent. This is infinite value. It's very tricky to get rid of amulets unless a player does something like Bahamut. There's not too much amulet removal in the game. And if you play this down early, this can be a massive value card. Turn 4, then turn 5, 2 and 1. You still have 2 floating for, let's say, a quick spell or something. You can often get this to trigger 5+ times. I've had one game where these 2 triggered 10 times. So what is that? That's plus 20 health and then 20 damage to all opponents. It's a super strong effect, infinite value, and to the point where people might just take Amulet Execution, maybe even not mulligan a bad hand just to keep an Amulet Execution for this. One advantage of using Lashina as your glory card is that you always get the combo turn 4 into turn 5 amulets. But again, if you reveal this, people are more likely to keep or save amulet destruction in their hands, so you might not be able to get the full effect that much. Still though, I really recommend this card. There is one card that searches Lashina though in the deck, so if you draw that with Lashina in your glory zone, then it's a bit of a waste, but I think the benefits of playing this early outweigh the detriments of that one card being a dud. Excellent. This is the final consideration for your glory card. It's not a particularly serious consideration, however, it has its uses. It's Juno's Secret Laboratory. Again, this is just another infinite value card. So Fanfare, you summon a golem, and then tap for an Earthright, or tap for a magic sediment, or tap to Earthright summon a golem. So every 2 turns you get either a strike form or a guard form golem. What I really like about this card is the ability to get infinite Earthrights. Now granted, we won't actually be using the Earthrights that much, although there are a couple of cards that do. However, the main reason I'm considering this as a glory card is similar to Lashina with the infinite value. That being said, Lashina is way more powerful. So really, and you can actually not even run this card, right? It's not that good. We are a follower and spell-based deck. We do not run a lot of Earthright. But I love Juno. I used to play Dirt Room back when Shadowverse was still new. It was a really janky off-meta control deck that wasn't very good. But the big payoff was Juno, the Juno value. And that's why I love this card so much. In fact, I like this card so much that I even bought the UR version of this card. Now, this is actually, I think, the cheapest UR card available. But for some reason, nobody wants it. But it was only like $14 or something, $10. So I just knew I had to pick it up. If it was $200 or something, nah, I'll pass. But since it was so cheap and one of my favorite cards of all time, I definitely had to go out and buy this. What I really love about this card is the texturing. You can't see it. You can't see it in the video. But it's got kind of like it's textured with lots of squares, just squares all around like tiles. Very pretty. Why don't I just run this in the actual deck? It's only worth $10. I kind of like just preserving it in here. Cool. So those are the 5 options for glory. What I would recommend most of the time though is either the Chimera or the Grand Summoning. You can do the D-Shift if you want, however I've found that it doesn't really go off that often, unfortunately. Plus there's a few cool combos you could do with the D-Shift that we'll get into later, that require it in the deck. Alright, on to the main deck. Let's start off with the followers and then go into the spells. The first follower is Malocchio, or however you say it. 1 cost 1/3 aura. Whenever any player draws a card, place an Armageddon counter on this card. And then for an either of 1, you get the big payoff. If this has 10 counters, strike, wipe the board. If this has 20 counters, strike, deal 10 damage to each leader. If this has 30 counters, strike, you win the game. Really funny card. I have never been able to pull off the 30 counter win the game. However, I have pulled off the 10 and 20 counter. So the idea with this card is that you play it down. It has aura, so it's a little tricky to get rid of. And in a 4-player format, right, everyone draws 3 cards per turn, plus any extra draw they do. So you're getting 3 per turn, plus any draw effects that you have as well. In fact, you get 4 per turn, right, because you draw 1 as well. And you just keep it reserved with aura until it gets to about 20, right? Then you're able to evolve, pop it, and strike. One funny thing about this strike ability is that you can do it multiple times, right? So if it survives, God forbid, you can actually deal 10 damage on your next turn as well to attack again. But it's never going to survive. In fact, most of the time, you never even get to evolve it because it just gets removed immediately with a sale or something. And also, it loses aura when it evolves. So it's not like you can attack and then it loses aura. Although that's not a big deal because once you attack, opponents can actually trade into it. So there are a couple of cool combos you can do with Malakio, right? There are, first you run a lot of draw spells just inherently as Runecraft. However, there is one very funny combo which we'll talk about right now. What you do is you don't just play Malakio and hope people draw enough cards. What you do is you play Malakio and then on that turn, or maybe the next turn, because it probably doesn't get removed straight away, maybe in 1 or 2 turns. But on the next turn, let's say you have 4 on it, then what you do is you slam Altered Fates on the table. What does Altered Fate do? Every opponent shuffles their hand into the deck and then draws the same number of cards. So, with 4 players, 5 cards, you immediately get to 20 counters and then you can immediately evolve and hit for 10. So, pretty much the only time Malakio is active is if you manage to draw both of these cards in your hand. So that's what I recommend. If you draw this card, or if you draw Altered Fate, do not play them just yet. Instead, just wait with them, be patient, be aware of the number of cards in opponent's hands, and then once you can get 20, immediately you play, you shuffle everything in, get 20, and then you evolve, deal 10 to everyone. Really funny combo. This combo is actually the only reason I've still got this card in the deck, because I'll be honest, it's not the best. It's quite weak. You never even really get the 10 cost off because people just remove it straight away. It isn't even a particularly good turn 1 play, assuming you didn't draw Altered Fate. Like, sure, you play this on your first turn, 3 play points, but you know, it's sitting there, someone removes it with 5 on a sale, something like that. So yeah, just save it for the combo. It's a from hand combo, not really played how it was meant to be, I'd say. Cool, let's move on. This is actually a card which supports the combo as well. It's the Gloryfinder Icarus. Icarus, Fanfare, put 2 cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck and draw that many. Evolve, do exactly the same thing. So that's 4 extra draws for Malocchio. Assuming you draw this and Altered Fate and Malocchio, you might be able to get to 30. Maybe play Malocchio for 1 turn, so that's 4 draws at least from just player draws. Then play this as 4, so you're up to 8. Maybe someone's drawn 2 extra, so 2, and then Altered Fate for 20. So it is possible. I've never been able to pull that off though. In any case, this is just a good card. So, for instance, cards like Grand Summoning or Daria, spoiler alert, is in the deck. You want your big powerful cards in the deck. And so this allows you to put them back into the deck. Now, of course, maybe you'll have to shuffle it as well to get the effect of Daria, but this is still great. So if you draw any of your bricks, this is a perfect card to draw, and then you begin drawing your other more useful spells or followers. So perfect card in this deck. Next we have just a good staple. It's Lou, short for Lou. Fanfare, add a 1-cost spell from your deck to your hand. You will run a lot of good 1-cost spells. That's it. Perfect card. Next we have another good generic card. It's Tosin Jordan, short for Jordan. Last words, add a spell from your cemetery to your hand. Now, considering it's Gloryfinder, and considering you only run 1 copy of everything, being able to recycle your strongest spell is very, very powerful. Can you imagine recycling Grand Summoning? That's pretty broken. Although, sometimes if it's too late into the game, you don't have enough targets for Grand Summoning anymore, but usually you do. So Tosin getting a Grand Summoning back is pretty disgusting, I'll be honest. And there's not much you can do to stop it unless you banish it. Unfortunately, this does become a late game card if you want to maximize the value. Although you can just play it in the mid game to get like a draw 2 card back. That's totally fine. So don't aim for the maximum value. You can also just use it as a tempo draw to get through your deck better. But lovely card. Next we have Agnes Tachyon. Of course, every rune deck runs this card. It has the effect whenever you play a spell, give a follower -1/-1. And then on evolve, you, same as Tosin Jordan, add a spell from your cemetery to your hand. Get a 3rd copy of Grand Summoning. Now that's actually not that good. So I have had a game once where I recycled Grand Summoning twice with both of these cards, and I played it 3 times. Unfortunately, on the 3rd time, it just wasn't good. Right? I'd gone through all my big strong minions, and I should have picked another spell for the 3rd time. However, getting any of those 2, playing it for the 2nd time, is still very powerful. Yeah, so spell recursion, always good. One little thing to note though is that yes, spell recursion from the cemetery is excellent. However, if you're doing that, you're not actually adding a spell into the cemetery for spell boost, right? So you're just recycling. In fact, sometimes you're taking it out, so you get spell boost -1. However, that's a very, very minor issue, something that you'd never worry about, realistically. Next, instead of fetching spells from the graveyard, we fetch spells from the deck for Merlin. Again, just another grand summoning target, fanfare added to your hand. Although sometimes you just want to get a 3-cost spell or a low-cost spell so that when you evolve for 2, you can play it immediately. Another recycle. As I'm sure you know, the evo is play a spell that costs 3 or less from your cemetery. Unfortunately, you can't get grand summoning, but just a super powerful effect. Oftentimes, it's just another draw or a removal if you need it. Again, Merlin, just a spell you'd run in every single rune deck. That's why their prices are so high. I'm very lucky that I pulled an actual version of the Merlin, and this is the Gloryfinder one. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a copy because I don't want to buy it. They're a bit expensive. Same with Agnes. I haven't actually pulled the base version, so I printed out a proxy. You might have noticed that. But next up, Star Reader Stella. This is just quite generically good. Look at the top 4 cards. Bury 1, top deck 1, bottom deck 1, add 1 to your hand. Pretty much does everything you need in this deck. So, you draw your best card, you dump your worst card. Usually one of the spells are not that good in the current situation or ever. Then you top deck your next draw, and you bottom deck, let's say, a very strong card to use with, let's say, Grand Summoning or D-Shift if you don't need it in your hand. A strike, look at the top card of your deck, put it in the cemetery if you want to. That's also good just for filtering, you know, a turbo spell boost, let's say. But what I've found in this deck is that I do not need to run a bunch of bury cards for spell boost. Here's a little secret. Here's a little tactic, right? Instead of burying all your cards, why don't you just draw all your cards? Then, at the end of your turn, you have more than 7, and you discard those cards until you're down to 7, right? So you don't need actually a lot of bury cards. Just fill your deck with draw cards, so that every turn you draw more than 7, let's say 8 or 9, and that becomes exactly the same as bury 2. The better thing, of course, is that you get to keep your best cards instead of burying, let's say, a very strong Chimera or Lashena or something like that. So yeah, the only reason we run this as a bury is because you get to choose which one you bury out of 4. And I don't think there's ever been a single time where I've had to make a hard decision of what to bury. Maybe a hard decision of what to bottom deck, but yeah, excellent. In the same vein, Pure-Hearted Singer. It's just a draw 2, right? So exactly the same idea, you just draw all your cards, and then discard the ones you don't need to boost your spell boost. Fanfare, last words, draw a card, not much else to say. Just if you need card draw, this is just an extremely strong card. You play it in every deck where you really need to run through as fast as possible. The body itself is fine. You can pull it off Grand Summoning, which is a extra bonus. So, yeah. Last 3-cost follower. It's a Dimension Shift payoff. It's Runeblade Summoner. So, a 5/5 Storm. You can play it with a Dimension Shift and attack again, so it becomes a 10 damage combo. That's already quite good. Usually it doesn't finish people off, but it gets them very close, and then you can finish them off with a few damage spells here and there. Runeblade Summoner, spell chain 10, So you need spell chain 10, but that's totally fine because you'll play this with 10, and then you need 10 for D-shift as well. So if you only have 10, sure, you banish them afterwards, but you still get the 10 damage combo. Yeah, having Storm is a nice little tech in Rune because usually you're relying on a effect damage attack, or maybe just flooding the board with Dimension Shift or Grand Summoning to actually deal damage. That's one of the things. Rune is a combo class, so you're not actually expecting to get a lot of face damage just throughout the game. You're waiting for one big turn to do it all. Next, Felice Leonardian Mage. Spell chain 7, deal 4 damage to each follower. Earthright, give this follower Storm. It is potentially an Earthright and a Force Storm. However, the only way to get the Earthright is with Juno in this deck. It is a nice little surprise when you do get it off. However, I would say that this is one of the weaker cards in the deck. Usually you would play it just for the board clear, deal 4 damage to everything. However, if they release a spell that does the same thing, or another spell, let's say, because there is one spell that does it. If they release another spell that board clears for Runecraft, I'm sure they have in the next 3 booster packs, I don't know. Then you would replace this. It's the only benefit of it being a follower is that you can pull it off Grand Summoning. However, I find that on turn 8, which is when Grand Summoning comes out, it's a little hard to have Spell Chain 7, surprisingly, for this deck. And that's because I haven't gone full out into spells. I've put half the deck as followers. But yeah, it can come in handy. I haven't actually had it be a major factor in any of the games I've played, unfortunately. Right, like I've removed maybe 1 or 2 with the Spell Chain. I've got maybe 1 time the Storm, but it hasn't had much impact, even though on paper it seems to be an okay card. Up to you there. Next we have Saphira. Saphira is a 4-cost rush, but you never play it for 4. It's actually a 4 plus 5, 9-cost storm that gains 1 attack for each follower in your cemetery. This is the big payoff card for running a lot of followers. You can get 10 to 15 attack just from this and finish someone off just like that. If you're running a lot of followers, this is a must include. It's another combo finisher for Runecraft. It's almost the same as doing a giant chimera, right? Because you've got all the things in there and then you just boom, play this and finish someone off. It's a very strong threat to the point where you might even consider it as your glory card. However, I think this comes in too late into the game to have that be a particularly serious option. Still though, you really want this card. You never really want to use it as a rush. Maybe if you're desperate, but 2 rush, like... One thing though is that it is 5 effect. So let's say you play it on 4 and then you can actually use it on 5 to gain a little bit of attack. But if people see this, they remove it, right? You're never going to be able to play it and the next turn do 5. Actually, correction, you can play this D-shift then use 5. Actually, I just thought of that combo. I don't know why I've never thought of that combo before. But that is a good combo. I've never pulled it off, and I think there has been times where I might have been able to. I'm stupid. I should have thought of that combo way earlier. Play this for 4, D-shift, next turn, effect for 5 to gain 10 attack. Excellent. Next card. Iron Staff Mechanic. Fanfare, search your deck for a 1-cost card. Put in the EX area, you can play it for 0. Evolve, exactly the same thing. Another 1-cost card, put in your hand, play it for 0. This is probably the perfect card to pull off Grand Summoning for the 5-cost. It thins your deck by 2. You have a lot of very good 1-cost spells. You can even pull out Malakio if you want. If you don't have that many spells. You don't even need to play it because it's in your EX area. Rune runs a lot of quick spells. So let's say you get something like Angelic Snipe or the Insight. You don't even have to play it for 1. You can just leave it there if your hand is full, or you can leave a removal spell as a threat. Do something like, hey, don't attack me, because if you do, I will just remove it. Right? Maybe attack someone else, because I have Angelic Barrage. But yeah, just an excellent card. Excellent to pull off Grand Summoning. If it's in the deck, which it usually is, I always pull it off there. If you drew it, there are a couple of ways to put it back in the deck as well, which, if you're going to play Grand Summoning, you definitely want to do. Very nice card. Next we have Loki. Loki is a Gloryfinder exclusive card. Repeat your next fanfare. Loki, if you can get it off, if you can find a turn into Giant Chimera, even with Spell Chain 20, even with Spell Chain 20, that's 20 damage to all opponents, which is an OTK for all intents and purposes. There are a lot of good board clear spellcraft cards as well, which use fanfare. For example, Felice. And there are a lot of just like draw cards like Lu. But the main thing you want to do is combo with Giant Chimera. Find a nice turn. You know, you might have to work for it. You won't find it every game. But if you can slam this down without losing instantly and then combo it, do so. It does have Ward, which provides a little bit of protection, although it's not going to help you that much. So yeah, perfect combo card. Next we have Mithril Golem. Mithril Golem, deal 3 damage to each enemy follower on the field with Spell Chain 7, Spell Chain 15, 5 to everything. So this is not as strong as Chimera, but it is a decent payoff card for Spell Chain. You would just run this in your deck and play it if needed. Honestly, it's not that strong, but once you do get to Spell Chain 15, it is a very nice card to play. Early game, it's like, when you play Grand Summoning, you probably will not pull this because you don't have enough spells in the graveyard yet. This is a late game card, however it would be much better if it was a middle game card. It's just that the Spell Chain is a bit too high. And Spell Chain 7, deal 3 to everything, is not that relevant. Maybe if it was 5 cost, that would be better. But at 6, people usually survive it. Next, Wizardess of Oz. Even though this is a Earthright card, this is still a great combo card, especially with D-Shift. Fanfare, summon a Magic Sediment, and you have 2 charges. That's why stuff like Felice or Juno can immediately fill your board or deal some damage. So I definitely recommend it, even though we don't have a lot of Earthright. But it's quick effect. Quick. Earthright. The next spell you play this turn costs 4 less. Only once per turn, you don't have to tap it, sorry. But yeah, just consume an Earthright. D-Shift becomes 1 cost. 1 cost D-Shift. With a follower on the board, then you can do something like the Storm 5/5. If you have these two, you are pretty much guaranteed a very strong D-Shift turn. Maybe even knock someone out or win. So, definitely include Wizards of Oz in your deck. Next one is a high roll card, Daria. God, I still have PTSD from Daria. Daria dominated the entire meta when it was out, when it was released in digital Shadowverse. Did they have to nerf it? I think they did. I can't quite remember. But this is just a high roll card, right? So Fanfare, discard your hand, put the top card of your deck into your EX area until it's full. So you basically discard, draw 5. And when you evolve it for 1, all of a sudden select a follower in your EX that costs 5 less to play, and also a spell costs 5 less to play. So it's another combo with D-Shift. If you manage to pull D-Shift, you get a 0 cost D-Shift. That pretty amazing. And then you get a follow along with it and Daria. Again, a massive combo turn. But you do need to be lucky. And this is why we include cards that shuffle it into the deck, because you really want to high roll with it. Now I've played this card maybe twice, and I've got a medium amount of luck the both times I played it. One awkward thing though is because you discard your entire hand, let's say you haven't managed to shuffle the big hits into the deck, right? And you've drawn the D-Shift, or you've drawn Grand Summoning, or whatever. You don't actually want to discard your hand. So another aspect of the high roll nature of this card is that you need to have a shit hand, or pardon my language, you need to have a bad hand first in order to consider playing it. So, you need to have a bad hand, and you need to high roll the top 5 cards of your deck. One thing which is interesting is that when this is on your field, your followers also count towards your spell chain. Now this hasn't been relevant in the 2 times I've played it, but I can definitely imagine a Chimera turn where finally you're able to get 30 spell chain. That is a reason to run Chimera into the deck. However, again, this is a high roll Gamba card, so will you actually hit it or not? Bit of a question. Next we have just a generically very strong late game mage card. Ryo, Omen of Truth. Fanfare, discard a mage card. Select an enemy follower on the field, deal at 9 damage. Remember, this is optional. You don't have to discard the card on the Fanfare if you don't need to deal the 9 damage. The main reason we run this card is the Evo for 2, so it's a 9 cost card essentially. Raisho, Omen of Truth, Evo. Look at the top 9 cards of your deck. Put up to 3 cards that cost 3 or less into the EX area, and they cost 3 less to play. So it's a 9 play point. You get up to 9 free play points using the 3 cards, and you get a quite big 9/9 on the board. Of course, we do run the specialized spell for this card, which we'll get into later. We won't pull it out just yet. But yeah, just a generically strong card. Another aspect, put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. So, One thing about this deck is that you do actually run very low, to the point where I've almost actually decked out multiple times due to how much draw and, filtering we do in the deck. So essentially, when this comes out late game, you can pretty much stack your deck exactly as you want, because 9 cards left, let's say, if you have less than 9 cards left, you just stack the deck exactly how you want. Also, you can, you probably have 15 or 20 left, and so if you can remember, eventually you're going to get into that stacked 9. If anyone has played Flesh and Blood, you'll be very familiar with this. I think that stacking deck is a really, really cool mechanic. Flesh and Blood does it perfectly, and you get a little taste of this with Ryo. Next we have the mech package. Now these are all Gloryfinder cards. Before we go into it though, I want to introduce the second and final amulet of the deck. Acceleratium. Search your deck for a Machina card, reveal it, add it to your hand, shuffle your deck. So you can search any of the 3 Machina or mech cards that are Gloryfinder exclusive. And they all cost 7, so when you play it on 7, you can also bury this card and gain 7 PP. So this is just such a massive swing, right? You get a free 7 cost, then you bury this, you get 7 play points. In fact, this is so good that I would recommend it as a glory card if you want to. You play it on your first turn, you get exactly the mech you want, and then on turn 7 you have an explosive turn. In fact, this is probably one of the most consistent glory cards you can use. It does not attract much aggro, unless you pull the next card we're going to talk about, and then you might pull some aggro. But it's a guaranteed turn 1 play, a guaranteed combo play when you do play that Machina. I have run this in the glory deck, the glory slot multiple times, and I've always been very happy with it. So Acceleratium, Grand Summoning, Giant Chimera, at times Lashina. These are the ones I recommend. Anyway, let's look at the Machina cards. Megaira the Indignant. Aura, so you can't target it with effects. This card deals 10 damage to a follow-up on the end phase, and 10 damage to a leader on your start phase. Rune really likes doing 10 damage. This is actually pretty hard to get rid of. 9 health, Aura. There's not too many cards to counter this. If you play this, suddenly you are the biggest threat on the table. You're likely to get taken out, or at least focused. So this is a pretty dangerous card to play in that sense. However, it is a big swing. Usually if it survives 1 turn, it won't win you the game. You do get to do 10 damage. But if it starts surviving 2 or 3 turns, your opponents are really in trouble. How do they remove this? A sail? Well, a sword has a sail, but it's usually only 5 or something. You really need a board clear. And you can't target it with banish or whatever. Very tricky. Surprisingly very hard to get rid of. In a very strong pick from Acceleratium. However, if you play Acceleratium and you show that you've got this card in hand, people are going to target you. So maybe you want to do one of the next 2 Machina cards. Alecto the Dissonant. Fanfare, put any number of followers from your hand onto your EX area. At the start of your end phase, give them +2/+2. When you evo, you can actually play a follower from your EX for 5 less. So it's essentially 2 followers in 1. Also it has ward, which protects you a little bit because suddenly your followers are getting beefed up. About this card. It's okay, it's pretty good. Usually though, the +2/+2 doesn't matter that much because you are a combo deck. You win in one turn or you don't win at all. However, it is good for maybe sometimes your hand is a bit too full and you want to keep a few of the cards. So it is good for getting them out onto the X area, save some hand space. There are two major disadvantages with this card though. One, there is EX area removal, so if you put like a Chimera into your EX area, they want to play Erd or something. So you can potentially lose your win con if you were to play this card and put into EX area. Two, you have cards like Ryo and Daria who want an empty EX area, or at least enough space for Ryo, so 3 spaces. Because of that, you have to be very careful in how you play this card. A bit of a awkward card to play at times, but still quite powerful. If you play it turn 7 with this, I'd say big swing. Once it gets late into the game though, and you're trying to set up for a Daria or a Ryo, it becomes a little bit more awkward. Final Machina card and also final follower, it is Tisiphone the Malignant. This is a bit of a tricky card. I had a bit of trouble figuring out how it worked the first time around. But basically, Rush Assail, you can attack enemies up to the number of opponents you have. So if you have 3 opponents, it's going to attack 3 times, then 2, then 1. If you only have 1 opponent left, this becomes a pretty bad card, to be honest. However, the next effect, Follower Strike, refresh this follower. For the rest of the turn it takes no damage. This is essentially a board clear. If an opponent has a 1 cost, what you do is you swing into the 1 cost. It only takes 1 damage, so it becomes a 6. And then it's immune to follower damage for the rest of the turn. So it destroys a 1 cost, 1 attack, then it untaps immediately. You destroy a high attack and a high attack. So that's 3 attacks for 3 opponents. And what happens? It ends up reserved, so people can't even attack into it the next turn. That is, it's underrated. I underrated it the first time I played it, but now it's very good. However, quite situational, of course. You need 3 opponents, and you need 3 cards on the board. Now, assuming you managed to pull that off and you got rid of 3, you can evolve it. When this evolves, you can strike. So it gains the same effect, but it's strike. So before it was follower strike. It only refreshes itself when you attack followers. However, when you evolve it, it becomes normal strike. What that means is, if you attack an opponent for 10, again, Runecraft loves dealing 10 damage. You attack an opponent for 10. It refreshes itself. You attack again and again. That is 30 damage to an opponent's face. If you manage to pull this off, you win. I've never managed to pull it off. It always gets removed, right? It doesn't have aura, so people can target it with a removal spell. I have managed to get it evolve maybe 2 or 3 times, but I've never managed to deal 30 damage yet. One day I will, and one day I'll be very happy. Excellent, that's all the followers and amulets, so all the rest of the spells. Let's tidy this up a bit. And now we're going to look through the spells. There's not too much to say about them, so hopefully we can go through them quickly. The first one is Insight. Quick, draw a card. Alright, before we carry on, one little skill thing I had to learn when playing Rune is to play on your opponent's turn, to float mana or float play points. A lot of card games like Hearthstone or Vanguard I've been into a little bit, you can't play during opponent's turn. You just put everything on your board and then pass. However, Runecraft has a lot of quick spells. What that means is, if you have a lot of quick spells on your turn, you actually draw a card, don't play anything, float your entire play point allocation. What this does is give you a lot of flexibility. So, if you have a draw card and a removal card in your hand, what you can do is float with both of them. Now, on opponent's turns, if they attack you, you use the removal spell to stop the damage coming through, to destroy that follower. If they don't attack you, on the end of the player's turn who just comes before you, you just put Insight and draw anyway. If you weren't going to play anything else anyway on your turn, why play Insight and draw a card, you know? Maybe you'll get, if you don't need that extra card, then that's just, you're limiting your possibilities. If you're not in a rush to get the card, you just keep it in your hand, and then you get the card for next turn anyway, playing a quick spell. So that does take a little to get used to. However, once you do, you'll find you're actually quite a threat. People don't want to attack you because, well, what if you have a removal? And you can bluff as well. This is extremely different from Sword, where Sword you just show what you've got, right? Sword is a very honest class. What you've got is what you see. Rune is a very tricky class. You hide your hand. You don't show your hand, and then when they attack you, you play Insight. No. When they attack you, you play like a surefire bullet or something. Yeah, so always remember that. Remember to float play points if you're not going to do a major play that turn. It really opens up the possibilities. Next card, Destructive Refrain. This is just to pull Lashena. If you have both of the amulets on the field though, you can play it for 3 to deal 2 to everything, but it's kind of bad honestly. Oftentimes, even if you've played a Lashena or you have it in your hand, you might just play it 1 cost, do nothing. Right? You still pick the first effect, but you can't, like, you whiff on the Lashena. 1 play point, do nothing, just add 1 to your spell boost. That's totally fine as well. But having another way to draw Lashena, excellent. You want to see Lashena every game. This is also a reason not to run Lashena as your glory card. Because hey, if you have 2 copies of Lashena in your deck, effectively. Next, Wind Blast. Spell chain 10, deal 4, or else it just deals 2. Again, very basic removal spell. Quite sad that this is not a quick spell. However, you want removal to stall until the late game. Rune runs a lot of removal. We're not aggro, we're combo. If you survive up to turn 10 and later, you've got it. Next one is a quick spell. Pretty much just a straight upgrade from Wind Blast. Quick spell, Lamplit Training of a Witch-to-Be. Deal 2 damage. Or if there's a racing follower, deal 3 damage. We only run 2 Umamusume followers in the deck, so you're never really going to get to 3. And of the 2, you're never going to really race them as well, so yeah. Basically this is just to fill up spell slots, so you have enough spells to trigger your spell boost and your chimera and whatnot. Even if you do race the 2 play point 2-1, I suppose that is an okay combo, because you play the 2 play point 2-1, the Torsen Jordan, you race it, you play this, and then you trade in. So that's a decent effect. But getting 1 extra damage, it's okay, it's not really worth it though to go out of your way. Next, Angelic Slipe. Quick, 2 damage. And we've covered it quickly as well. Angelic Barrage. Quick, 1 damage to everything. Covered quickly as well. Actually, 1 damage doesn't really matter. You just play this for spell burst. It's never really enough to make a difference. Maybe if you're playing against Forestcraft and do a Fairy. That's pretty funny, but I haven't managed to. Next, a very important card to include in your deck. It's Mystic Ring. Like we've said many times before, you want your strong cards in your deck to combo them. Mystic Ring, put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck, draw a card. It's a cycle, just like Insight. However, you don't filter, but putting your strong card on the bottom of the deck for later is basically the same as filtering, like Insight. So, you must run this, right? It makes Daria more consistent, it makes Grand Summoning more consistent. Great card. On to the 2-drops. Sorcery Cache. Quick, 2 play point. Look at the top 4 cards. Bury 1, draw 1. Because I run so many followers, I've actually whiffed on this multiple times, which feels really bad. However, I would still suggest running it, because it is the top 4, right? Can you imagine? I whiffed on 4 cards, all 4 were followers. That feels bad. But I think most of the time you do get 2 spells. Even if you only get 1, it's a draw 1. Again, this is one of those flexible cards, right? So you keep this in your hand along with, let's say, a removal card. You don't play it unless you don't need the removal, and then you play it on the end of your opponent's turn. Next, Chain of Calling. Again, quick. I'm not sure why this is quick though, but hey, I'm not complaining. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal a follower, add them to your hand. It also has Spell Chain 10, recover 1, so it can be a 1 cost. However, that's not really that important. If you do play it as a quick, you don't really need that extra play point. And if you play it, let's say late game, the 1 play point could be useful. However, you're just getting it to get your Chimera or something like that. But just a good card in general, one which you should run. Next one, Make Some Noise. Quick, select an enemy follower on the field, deal it 3. If there's an Umumusme card in your field, deal 4. So having an Umumusme card on your field is a bit more possible to deal 4, right? Having a racing one is a bit hard, but having a card is fine. It's a good pull off of Agnes. It's just a fine removal, but usually you just have in your hand removal or a draw, and you play it if someone attacks you. Another note about bluffing is that you can be like, oh, hey, don't attack me. I actually have a removal spell in my hand. But actually all you have is Chain of Calling. So you can bluff. Next we have Monochromatic Destruction. So there's actually a lot of 2-cost deal 3 damage cards in the rune pool. And I haven't included all of them. So it was a bit tricky. I did end up including this one because it was a quick, deals 2 damage, and because we want to see Lashina every game, we do actually reasonably often get the effect with 2 idolatry cards, deal 2 damage, and heal 2. Rune does not have that much healing, that much defense, so maybe it's an okay having 2 heal. Maybe it doesn't make a difference, but hey, it's fine. And 2 damage to a opponent leader can make the difference, get them down low enough so that your 10 damage can finish them off. Next, Honest Cohort. This is a Ryo payoff. Quick, deal 3 damage. If Ryo specifically is on your field, deal 6 and 3 to the leader. Even without Ryo, it's a 2 cost 3, so you remove a follower as it attacks you, that's fine. If you do, you get it off Ryo, 6 and 3 to leader. Again, same as monochromatic destruction. That can make the difference, getting it down low enough to combo on your next few turns. Next, Rime Wind. Quick. Spell chain 10, put a follower on top of its opponent's deck, or without spell chain, return it to the hand. This is just such a good card, right? It's run in competitive decks as well. Basically, if 3 damage is not enough, which later into the game it often is not, this becomes a removal. One problem though is that if it has fanfare, they get to do it again. However, you don't really care, right? They get the effect, if they get a fanfare again, whatever. But you prevented 6 damage to face, that's more important. So, a must include. Don't be put off by the opponent still getting the card. It's not a hard removal, it's a soft removal, but it is a must include, just because its defensive capabilities are so strong. Next is a couple of neutral cards. Surefire Bullet, deal 3 or 4 if it's an Evolves card. It is a quick as well. It's not that good. It's okay. But just to make up the numbers, yeah, it's okay. 6 out of 10. 6.5 out of 10. Final 2 drop. Trial of Light. Now, you can consider it just a 2 cost draw card, which is not bad. Honestly, it's not bad, 2 cost draw card. However, it has the effect when this card is discarded, draw a card. One ruling I am not sure of is that if you discard this card at the end of your turn, let's say you have 9 cards in hand, and you discard this as one of your cards, do you draw 1 card and then have to discard that because you have too many cards in hand? Or do you get to keep it and you get to keep 8 cards in your hand? If any of you guys know the ruling for this, please let me know. What we've been doing is playing the card and allowing that 8th card to stay in your hand, right? Because you think about it, you have 8 cards in your hand, you discard this for 7, you have 7, you've fulfilled the requirements at that point of going down to 7. Then this draws 1, you're back to 8. But you've already discarded to get it down to 7, so we've allowed you to keep it. But if we've been playing it wrong, please let us know. Apart from that though, sometimes people like Abysscraft discard cards from your hand and you can always replay it, but that doesn't come off too often. On to 3 costs. Fate's Hand, 3 play point, draw 2, spell chain 10, recover 1. Nothing much else to say there. You don't need the spell chain 10, you often just need the draw 2. So don't worry about maximizing efficiency. Another card, Concentration, draw 1, get heal 3, Earthright, draw 2. This card is so nice that competitive 1v1 decks that also do not run Earthright at all, play it. One of, just as a tech card. Because 3 health is nothing to be scoffed at. It can make the difference, and you can recur this with a lot of the followers. So suddenly it becomes an extra 9, or God forbid 12. Now that's starting to get a problem. Luckily, you can actually get the Earthright off this card because we do run Juno. So it's even better. Very nice card, Concentration. Magic Missile, deal 2, draw a card, just generically good. You get both the damage and the draw as well, so it's an even better quick spell to hold in your hand. I don't know whether you can play this. yeah, you cannot play this if there's no enemy followers on the field. That's one little thing to watch out for. So maybe you don't want to do it on the end of your the person right before you, because they might board clear and they have no followers left. So maybe just at the end of your person before, across from you or to the side from you, maybe then. Next, Witch Bolt. Send the enemy follower on field, deal 5 damage. If there's an evolved follower on your field, draw 1. I've actually had a little bit of trouble getting the draw effect from this because we run so little followers, especially with evolve. It's a little bit hard. We only run, I think, like 10 followers with evolve from here, so sometimes can be a bit hard to get it off. If you do, it's good though. This is one of the best cards to get from, like, let's say a Merlin. So you can Merlin, draw 1, refresh it, draw 1, but yeah, not bad. Next, another payoff card for Ryo, it's Truth's Education. Even if you don't get it off Ryo, it's good. It actually triggers surprisingly often. You surprisingly have 2 or more followers on the field. And if you do, you choose 2 of the effects, draw 2 cards, deal 3 damage to each enemy leader, very powerful, or deal 3 damage to a follower. That third effect is quite bad compared to the other 2, but hey, sometimes you need it. Even if you just play it for 1, draw 2 cards, it's still fine. Like one of the effects, draw 2 or deal 3 damage. It's still very good. And let's say you recur it. Suddenly you're dealing 6-9 damage to each enemy follower. Sorry, each enemy leader. Which is not 10, very immersion breaking, but it is a lot. Now we're starting to get into high cost cards. They are a lot more awkward to play. But as of Omen of the 10, they are the best available. Again, along with the new booster packs, I'm sure that these will be replaced. Multi-part experiment. Choose 2 of the following, spell chain 10, do all 3. Deal 3 damage to an enemy follower. Summon a guard fort golem, draw a card. All decent effects. Right, they're all decent. If you get to pick 3, it's a very good card. But yeah, this is mostly just filler. It is decent, but it just costs too much. It's 4. I mean, you do get a lot of value of it, but 4 in this deck is a bit tricky to play. It's still good though. I think the art is cute, so that's another reason why I run it. But other than that, you can probably replace this with a cheaper spell, even though it's less powerful, but you get it into the cemetery a lot faster. Fiery Embrace though I do recommend, because you just select an enemy follower on the field and destroy it. It deals with the high cost followers well, whereas Multi-Part Experiment only deals 3. So Spell Chain 10 also deals 3 damage to the leader. Basically 4 I think is fine to be able to delete any character with any amount of health, because you do have trouble dealing with followers more than 3 or 4 health, right? So even though it costs a lot, do include it. And by the time you need to play it, you pretty much always have Spell Chain 10 to get the extra 3 damage as well. Next, also a very important high cost card, it's Execution. You run good amulets, your opponents run good amulets as well. Very important tech card. Some other classes do not like running a 4-cost Execution. However, because it contributes to spell chain, you can get away with it in Runecraft. Very important card. There are a lot of very good infinite value amulets, Swordcraft, Dragoncraft as well, occasionally Havencraft. But so very good include. Also a quick. Last card in the deck, Alchemical Lore. 5 cost, deal 4 to everything. This is just a spell version of, was it Leonard? I forgot her name. But 4 damage to each enemy follower on the field. Sometimes you just need this to clear the board. 4 damage is not bad as well. Deal 4 damage to each enemy follower on the field. If you manage to get this off, if you manage to get a lot of value for it, 5 is enough. However, 5 is still a little bit costly. Up to you whether you run it, although it has proven useful in my experience. One last bonus card is the carrot. You have a lot of space in your evolve deck, so you can run any number of carrots. I actually just run 1 because there's so much space in the evolve deck. I'm like, hey guys, I'm never going to run out of carrots in my deck, so I'm just going to use 1 and keep using it. In fact, there's only 2 cards which use the carrot as well, so do you need to run more than 1? You know, at some point I would like to get like a stylized custom carrot card with like custom art just to bling out my deck a bit. That's actually a good idea. Maybe if someone can make like a full art carrot, I would definitely proxy it into my deck. Okay, though, bonus. Let's look at the tokens. So I've already looked at these 2 before, Destruction in black and white for your Lashina. You only really need 1 of those. Next we have 2 magic sediments. Now you don't actually need 2, you just need 1. Because you can be like, oh, I have two like this, and then when you do it, you immediately stack it. However, the reason I run 2 is just for newer players, because it can get confusing with board space. Occasionally this deck can run out of board space, especially if you play Juno. So let's say you have Juno and you have 3 cards on the board. Juno, you summon the sediment. Suddenly you cannot summon the sediment because you don't have enough space to put it and then stack. Without the stack, people might get confused. There's something like, oh, I have 1, I Juno, I have 2. No, it doesn't work like that. You need the space. So that's the only reason I run 2, is just in case a new player comes and we need to teach them the game and they get a bit confused on how stack actually works. Next, 2 strike form, because a few of your cards are golems. And 2 guard form golems, because again a few of your cards summon golems. That is all for the deck. Alright. Thank you guys for sitting through that if you did. I know 1 hour, 1 hour 20 is a long time. I tend to just make these to just have something on in the background to talk about. But yeah, next video we will take a look at Runecraft gameplay. That should be interesting, and we'll show you how it works, because Runecraft is definitely one of the harder decks to play. It's got a reasonable skill cap. Alright, we'll see you later.